Welcome back. I'm joined in studio by Lee Vang, a social worker and working for the Ministry of Children and Family in Adoption Services. Lee, tell me about what's the needs that we have in British Columbia. Most people think of adoption, think of around the world, but there's, what, 1,000 kids in care that need to be adopted in British Columbia?
That's right, yeah. Currently, there's 1,000 children that the Ministry of Children and Family Development is legally responsible for, where we've determined that the best plan for the child is adoption.
And how many, I mean, these kids have been in foster care for sometimes long periods of time. How often, how many kids do you place in adoption per year?
Last year, we placed just over 300 children in the province. In our region, in Vancouver Coastal Region, that's the region I work for, we have, last year we placed about 55 children. Wow. So, you know, it's time-consuming work in terms of finding the best home for the child. The work we do is we're definitely interested in finding the best homes for children, and so it does take us time to look at the child's needs. And
you do home visits. It's quite a complicated process.
Yes,
it's not just going to Walmart and picking up a child,
No.
obviously. These are human beings. And then, what I find fascinating is there's been a real push in the last 8-10 years to understand the cultural background of the child, particularly when it comes to First Nations kids. Tell me a little bit about that, because when we think of cross-cultural adoption, we think overseas, but there's a lot of cross-cultural adoption going on in British Columbia. Tell me about that choice to say we're trying to place First Nations kids with First Nations families? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yes, certainly. It is in our adoption standards where we look at placing children who are of Aboriginal heritage with Aboriginal families first and foremost. About 40% of the children that are available for adoption are First Nations, and that's one of the primary reasons why we're focusing on finding the right cultural match.
Hey, so, why is that important?
Well, historically, in adoption practice, that wasn't something that was done, and I think in the last decade or so, we've really looked at improving how do we really honor the cultural identity of children, because what we've seen from adult adoptees is a real voice to the issue of cultural identity and the lack of supports. And when we don't place children in an Aboriginal home, they don't have the opportunities to learn about their Aboriginal heritage. They don't have the opportunities to learn language or traditions, and it really is an important part of identity development formation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Lee. The issue of identity of these kids. I mean, when you adopt a child, you're not just adopting a person that you can now, make them become whatever you are. There's an essence of how do you respect their own identity that comes into your home.
Oh, for sure. I mean, what we like to say to adoptive families is, you're not just, adopting a child who's going to, blend into your family. When you're adopting cross-culturally, we ask that families embrace the culture of the child and not just treat it as something that the family does on special holidays, that it is part of the family's identity and not just the child's identity. In order for what we've seen through research and practice is that children often feel most positive about their cultural identity when they see that their family members also embrace it, and it's a part of the family.
So it's almost like, hey, we're happy that you're bringing this culture background into our home. This is a wonderful, addition to us. We're not trying to exclude it and pretend it doesn't exist.
That's right, or that it just affects only the child,
right.
Because it doesn't.
Right.
In order for a child to maintain a sense of pride about their cultural identity, the family, the parents really need to also understand what the culture is, really embrace it, and really be involved and not just treat it as a side issue.
Right. It's very, very important. Leave me about 30 seconds. If there's people watching who says, we're interested in adoption in British Columbia, what do they do?
The main thing is they can certainly check out our website. It's a website organized by the Adoptive Families Association of BC and the Ministry. It's www.bcadoption.com.
We'll put it up on the screen
Okay,
for sure,
great.
Yeah.
And what they can do is there's a hotline that they can phone to get information about adoption in BC, because each region will process the applications a little bit differently. So in my region, certainly I'm the person that would get the initial phone calls.
Right.
We'd send out an application package. We would have applicants come through, a screening interview, and then some legal requirements, of course, are an adoption education program and an adoption home study.
Wow. Well, Lee, thank you so much, and I love the work you're doing. I love that you're putting kids that may not have a home into homes. Thanks so much for coming on,
Thanks
Lee.
so much,
really
Randall.
great to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
Adoption is a complex process, but as I interviewed the different people involved, I realized that it's the most amazing social response to the plight of the weakest and vulnerable in our world. Families that choose to adopt give life and love to kids that would never have that opportunity. I think it's important to include the birth mother whenever possible and to inform and be transparent with the adoptive children about where they came from and about why they were adopted. Adoption really is a powerful response to the misfortune that so many children face in our world. As I held those babies in Ethiopia, my heart was overwhelmed with compassion. I wanted to take them home and care for them myself. Adoption really is a selfless spiritual act. I can't wait to hold that little Samuel again, this time with his new parents here in Canada. Thanks for watching. That's my perspective.